Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Liberty Show with Kevin Fortune. I'm Kevin Fortune, the King of Liberty. This is a show where you, the citizen, can raise your voice in a national platform to speak out on things about liberty. And tonight we have a very, very special guest, one of my favorite people, someone that I wanted on my show more than anyone else, and that's Mr. Maj Toure. So we're going to get started tonight. Tonight's theme is Black Guns Matter, and we're going to talk about the Second Amendment and other things like that. But as usual, we always get started with my favorite conservative. So we're going to go down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Mr. David from Fort Lauderdale, you're on the Liberty Show.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. My biggest concern in today's environment is the assault on our inalienable rights. They're being replaced by nothing but feelings and same speak. And that in itself sends a warning that our important right of free speech is under attack, and the Second Amendment is the only one that can stop such nonsense. Not to abuse it, but it's there for defense and purpose. And we have looting, we have destruction of property, graffiti. It's just the crazy times that we live in today. Why would we even think about taking away our Second Amendment rights?
Well, I agree with, as a person of liberty, this is part of our Bill of Rights, our freedom. Once again, you don't have to use it. You don't have to have one yourself, but you shouldn't deny others. So, I always ask David, why do you think our forefathers put that in there if they didn't want us to use it? Do you agree?
I agree. It was to protect themselves from a tyrant.
Right. Great. Well, David, thanks so much. It's good to hear from you. We always like to open with you. You always have something brilliant and profound to say. So now we're going to go to our special guest, the man of the hour, Mr. Maj Toure himself. Welcome, Maj. You're on the Liberty Show.
What's up, man? I appreciate y'all for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, you're very popular. We got a lot of people called in tonight. You are really a great man. You are one of my heroes. This Liberty Show is about liberty. So first, let's find out a little bit about who Maj Toure is. You mentioned, I saw you on another podcast, you're a man of liberty and freedom. Explain to me, what do you mean by you're for liberty and freedom?
Well, it means that I want everyone to have the means to do whatever they choose to do, as long as you're not violating somebody else's body or their personal property. I want everybody to be able to do that. I want you to be able to, I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to, think about it as much. It's yours. It's your freedom. And you're within your liberty to exercise your freedoms the way that you choose to. And I think that if more people view the world under those terms, we'd have a lot less, infringement and a lot less mental enslavement. So that's my view of freedom. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to do what you do. I just have to respect what you do in your space. And I think we got to get back to that lane of living for most people. So we're not infringing and we're not being infringed upon.
I totally agree, man. That's why you're my hero. You sound like me. You sound like my twin. And one thing, our motto here, my motto is to put liberty into action. And I agree with you. We do a lot of talking about freedom and liberty and civil rights. But when it's time to actually implement it, we want to, oh, no, but you can't do this. You can't say that. And that's one reason I like you, that you're putting your liberty into action. Some of the things that you are saying and doing is to actually put our liberty into action. Speaking of that, you sound like a libertarian. I know that you ran as a libertarian and you've been associated with libertarian movement. Can you tell us a little bit about that, your run up there in Philly?
Yeah, it was, in essence, it was to kind of like make sure that we got people engaged from the urban demographic. Philadelphia is 80% Democrat. It was an uphill battle. We learned a lot. We learned about the bias and getting third parties, even getting them on the ballot. We learned a lot about the bias and how we approach the voting process, the political process in general. But the vast majority of the people that did vote for me a lot of them were first-time voters. So for us, it was like, okay, let's see if we can do this in the city. We recognize what we did improperly. We recognize what we're going to do more productively on the next go-round, whether that's me as a candidate or somebody else. But we also saw the levels of Marxism and extreme left propaganda and bullying and political, play that went into it. So it was a good overall learning experience. I think more people, from what my understanding and experiencing people, more people are receptive to the libertarian message in urban America than we may have been aware of. So that's a little feather in our cap, and I like that. So, we're in an election year. We got local elections coming up in one more year. But we're going to apply all of that information to maybe with some more serious candidates that can be in from the urban demographic, for the urban demographic, but also identify as independent and or libertarian.
I love that answer. I tell you, you're my favorite. Oh, my God. You know how to answer questions. But great point. And, you brought out something that I've been working for years and years, and that is to bring the message of a third party or to get people out of the Republican, Democrat, or the two-party system box. I don't care which party, but especially people of color and people, like you said, in urban areas, we want to just lock them in and box them in. And I think that's what's going on now. People are tired of that. And, you can be an African-American and be a Republican. You can be, whatever you want to be. It's your freedom and you're right. How did you get to where you're at? Did you start off, I think you were raised Democrat, Republican. Can you tell us a little about that, your journey to where you got there?
Yeah, I was raised Democrat. Then I went Republican. I mean, it's just like everything else. You go through different evolution. And that's why I don't really attack people for whatever party they choose to be in. It's no different. That's the same as, why would I attack somebody that's in the 6th grade as opposed to somebody that's in the 12th grade? It's just different levels of evolution and understanding. When you're in an environment and your environment is 80% Democrat, that's all you know. And then there's a PR spin to make you think that, if you're black, you're supposed to be this. And then you start doing more information. Then you actually know what a Republican means. A republic means you're your own sovereign entity. And so that's appealing. Each individual is the smallest republic. What we live in called America was designed as a constitutional republic. A republic that uses constitutional practices to determine while we're, getting what the vast majority of people need, we're also respecting the individual's rights. The individual does not have to go along with the remainder or the majority per se. And that system it was designed very, very well. And even though we have some contradictions, and when I say we, I mean our nation through our founding fathers, we got some contradictions, but how we wrote that out, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence, it was written and structured in a very impactful and powerful way. I think that there are people that would not like that to be the consistent way that we as Americans operate, and I believe that we have been infiltrated. So now you have to start looking at what did these great men and women, why did they structure these things this way? Okay, what were the flaws? What were the successes? And a lot of those men didn't want a two-party system. Even that, the fact that I'm saying a lot of those men, and there's no such thing as a founding mother, that's a contradiction. We have to involve more and more women in liberty, like the great Frederick Douglass, who gave a lot of his life to the women's suffrage movement. My point in saying that is we have to recognize what we did inaccurate. And when we start to do that, we get back to more, okay, these guys were on liberty. We the people. There's a reason for these things. And so from that, you go from you practice the democratic process by voting to strengthen this constitutional republic. But you can be a libertarian, independent, Democrat, Republican to do these things. For me, getting to a space of being a libertarian, it's because I keep learning more and more and more about liberty, learning more and more that, the founding fathers did not want a two-party system, like literally said it, And so when you start seeing more and more of that, you start recognizing that there are areas that we have been weak and light on when it comes to liberty because we've allowed the two-party system to be the dominant narrative or theme for some time now. That doesn't make it wrong or evil per se. It just means that, hey, man, we got to start leaning back into more of a system of balance. The strongest shape in geometry, or not geometry, but the strongest actual shape is a pyramid. That's three-pointed, like the judicial, executive, and legislative branch. That's a pyramid. It's not an accident that a pyramid's on the back of the dollar. That's a very strong shape. And if we go on by two-party systems as opposed to adding a third, I think or highlighting a third, because the third is already there. The Libertarian Party is the third largest political party in the nation, and it's only been here since 1971. Point being is we have an opportunity here to strengthen and have one of the strongest shapes in the form of our political parties that we're leaning on, Democrat, Republican, and Libertarian. And so that, and that geometry and that type of thing those things are interesting to me. And so I just try to like exercise some of that in my thought process generally. And all of that and studying and seeing, that it wasn't supposed to only be a two-party system and so forth and so on. It just makes me go, okay, let's start informing more people about this Libertarian Party and this ideal that is very, very necessary for us to defend and expand on our republic.
That's a great answer. But just to piggyback on that, a person could be a libertarian, the small L, in their mindset without actually being a part of the party. And that's
Correct.
what I think we're seeing a lot today. Don't just get locked into any kind of party, but it's about freedom. And like you said. So now let's talk about the main thing we want to talk about tonight. You are the founder of Black Guns Matter. And what impressed me so much about you, being a person of liberty, and I have traveled this nation teaching, speaking, and a lot of people, even the, quote, libertarians, end quote, that talk liberty, they don't want to put it into action. But you
Right.
are about actually putting your liberty into action and doing something. So that's why I'm so proud of you. So tell us about Black Guns Matter and how it got started.
Basically, in 2016, we started to see everywhere we went, there were people saying, we were talking about the 2016 national elections, and everybody was saying, oh, we need a voters registration drive, we need a voters registration drive, all of these other different things. And I'm like, man, we need a license to carry drive. We need people, there's folks that's running around catching these charges, catching cases for things. I mean, simple gun possession, not because they're bad guys, but because they're basically, in essence, not aware what the rules are and getting a license. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that licensing a human right, is wrong, and it's very unconstitutional. However, in the current state of affairs, when people don't have the understanding of that, you got to inform them. You got to give them that knowledge base. And so what we saw was, okay, let's just do an event. We did this event, and we had, way too many people come. And then a lot of those people were saying, man, I want something like this in my town. So we just kept doing, we put together a GoFundMe. We started going from city to city. Our initial goal was $25,000. We raised that. And when we raised that, we kept going. And, 3-4 years later, here we are in that regard, just trying to continue to make sure that we're informing urban Americans, not limited to, but with a strong focus on urban America, because that's where the most unconstitutional, anti-human rights legislation is being presented, because those are the biggest pockets of population. So, we've raised and gave away about over $300,000 to keep these classes, these political education, conflict resolution, and firearm safety classes available to everyone. And anyone that comes that signs up for any of the classes all across the country didn't have to pay anything. You can volunteer or donate if you choose. We ask everybody to hit the GoFundMe link so we can still hire people, instructors, lawyers, give them something for their time, as well as, getting materials to the classes, so forth and so on. But we, in essence, give the information that people need in their locality and plug people with quality instructors and ranges and things of that nature in the actual community that they're from. I can't help you if I live in Philadelphia the same way as someone that's in your community that's been there for you, that's a service that you can support, and they can support you. So that's been our goal. That's what we've done. And it's been great. I just don't think, the reality is there has not been something like BGM before us. And there currently still isn't anything like us. There's been a few people that have tried to, emulate, but what's for me is for me. What's for them is for them. And so we're having a great time. We just got back from Jackson, Mississippi doing a class. We did a class in Dallas, Texas. We're going back to Dallas in a little bit. We're doing Boston. I got 20 cities coming up. So we're just traveling around the country, informing people about their human right to self-defense as stated in the Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights, as well as what it means to be a responsible gun owner, dealing with conflict resolution, as well as just getting people politically educated and bringing that civics and that social understanding back to the community.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you mentioned the conflict resolution, because I think sometimes people think you're just running around promoting guns or shooting guns, but you actually train on gun safety, but you also do classes on conflict resolution. So we're about to transition and get some questions. So anyone that has a question, hit the little button or begin to raise your finger. I just want to remind everyone you're listening to The Liberty Show with Kevin Fortune, and our special honored guest tonight is Mr. Maj Toure, the founder of Black Guns Matter. and we're talking about Black guns, how they matter in the urban communities, and the Second Amendment's rights. So, Jared, who do we have first with the question or comment?
All right. Adam says he has a comment. Let's hear from Adam. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Adam, what city are you from?
Currently around the Austin, Texas area.
Oh, great. Welcome to the Liberty Show. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for that, and thanks for having me on. It's a real honor to be with you guys and to speak for the first time with one of my heroes, Maj Toure. I just want Maj to know that I used to, many years ago, I supported the National Rifle Association. I was a member of them. Over time, long story short, there's just kind of some political differences that I had with them. And I left them to go to the Gun Owners of America and supported GOA for a while. And then a few years ago, Gun Owners of America decided to dip their toe into another pool. Basically, I got an email from them saying that they were supporting the Brett Kavanaugh appointment to the Supreme Court, which I consider Brett Kavanaugh, he's one of these guys that was one of the authors of all the security state, post 9/11 security state stuff that we have. So I didn't like that stance. And so I looked again for what is another gun rights organization that I can support. And I knew, because of all my years in the NRA and then with the GOA for a little while, that the Black community is just very underrepresented in the gun rights community. And that's when I came across the NAAGA, which I'm sure Maj is also familiar with. And I was just about to join them. Actually, I eventually did. But then I found Maj Toure's work online. And so, Maj, I want you to know that I've been supporting Black Guns Matter now since 2018. I supported your run for city council there in Philadelphia. And I've listened to you enough speaking on things such as natural rights and the right of self-defense and responsible gun ownership. I'm a combat veteran of the United States military myself, so I can really appreciate your approach to wanting to defend life and liberty and property and the American people. So that's what I had to say to Maj. And then to everybody, I want to say that the issue that I'm really concerned about right now is the idea that unfortunately the President of the United States floated on Twitter right after the George Floyd lynching, the murder happened, and then the ensuing protests with the looting and the rioting, and the Commander-in-Chief, President Trump, threatened to deploy the federal military on domestic soil against Americans. And so since then, that very day, I made a YouTube video. And since then, I've basically been grinding the axe about this. As a former member of the armed services that served overseas, I understand what it means when you open up that Pandora's box of that kind of firepower in an area, a territory. Those people talking about we need the federal military to put down protests and riots and looting, they're absolutely naive. They're ignorant. They have not been educated. They don't understand what they're talking about. If you think that any of the rioting, the looting, the destruction, the chaos that we've seen so far, if you think that's bad, just wait until you unleash the federal military and its power here on American soil against American civilians. It'll be something that we'll regret almost immediately, and every man, woman, and child in this country will be touched by it. Everybody will feel the grief and the pain of it before it's over with. And so what I would say, just to wrap up then, is that I see the problem with the President of the United States making a terroristic threat against the American people with the federal military as being very similar to the problem of not addressing the problem of systemic racism, especially in policing and in the criminal justice system. It's like the violence of the state is it's like a hammer and every problem looks like a nail. And so that's what they're going to do. So what I'm advocating, my call to action for everyone is that as Americans, no matter how painful this time is that we're going through right now, let's all commit that we're going to maintain civilian government, that we're going to work things out amongst ourselves. And it may be painful. There may be some destruction. Unfortunately, there may even be some more bloodshed as this thing goes along. But just as adamant as I am that every American should be able to enjoy the full blessings of liberty in everything from free speech to enjoying their right to bear arms, I think it's just as important that we make sure we put that check and balance on the commander-in-chief so that he does not exacerbate the problem by deploying domestically federal troops. You know, we can have all these discussions we want to about, you know, municipal police and sheriffs and National Guard and state police. And, you know, we can even talk about these movements to defund the police. You know, I'm an abolitionist. I believe in abolishing the police, but that's because I'm a libertarian. I'm a voluntarist. But what I really want for people to understand right now is that we need to figure this out as civilians, and we absolutely cannot allow the federal government to unleash the power of the U.S. military against Americans here domestically.
Thank you, Adam. That was a lot of power-packed information. You brought up a really good point. Maj, I want you to address one thing he said. He talked about, you know, black guns in the urban areas, especially in the black communities, which has been a fear, especially I grew up near Chicago, and in Chicago, New York, and all these places, people already fear about all of the crime and the violence there. But can you talk about that point about how instead of really inciting more crime and murders, I think having more guns would actually help the situation? Will you address that issue?
So when you have a scenario where there's more, the culture drives politics, right?
Right.
So when the culture, so take Texas, for example. Texas doesn't have traditionally very good gun laws, like respecting the Constitution. What Texas does have is a good culture around firearms ownership, right? So when you change the culture, you'll get different legislation, or the energy or the level of violent crimes and association with that drops. So when you inform places and there's more of a respect for the Second Amendment and things of that nature, you have a space where more and more people are respectful firearms owners. Some of those cliches are true, you know, or those little sayings like an armed society is a polite society. A lot of that stuff is very true because it's, hey, man, there's a 70% chance that this person's holding. I don't want to be in a gunfight. I don't want to have to shoot nobody. I don't want to get shot at. We'll move on. We'll respect their property. We'll respect them as humans, right?
Right.
So that part is true. In regards to something else that the brother said, first, thank you for supporting for so long, especially since 2018. Thank you for supporting the city council run. And I think that he said something that was very important. Like when you're in the street, like you've been in certain, you maybe have been in certain had certain experiences. Some people that say they want to smoke, they haven't had that experience. So this is a different thing. War, like actual combat, a shootout is one thing. A shootout is usually over quick. There may be some bystanders, innocent bystanders hits. There may not be. Most times out of 10, nobody hits anything. It's people just shooting, right? Rounds going back and forth. War is a constant, destructive death wave. And I think people are not aware of the psychological ramifications that go along with that. That's why there's over 22 veterans, American veterans daily that commit suicide. And that's not because they're not strong men and women. It's because they've seen things that are it's a death wave. And I think that to incite or even pump fake or threaten to unleash federal troops on American soil, I do think that is irresponsible of any president. I also think that it's irresponsible of any president, even whether he or she says it or not, to unwantedly just destroy life in general. I am not okay with the consistent war state that our nation has consistently been in. We've been in Afghanistan for over 19 years at this point. I think we're in a lot of places that we should not be. I think America was much stronger when America was focused on America. Our policy was stronger when we didn't have so much international policy. So my point there, I wanted to say that in relation to the brother's statement in regards to how people deal with or potentially could deal with that level of death and war. And out of it being actually very unconstitutional. And that is exactly why the Second Amendment exists. It's there because if governments start feeling froggy, we need to put them right back in line, and so I think that we got to look at that from a perspective, as well as, even if I like Donald Trump, I think he's entertaining. I think he's passionate about America. I think that he's his track record in the first term economically has shown that he's willing to get rid of some red tape to, get some of that economic machine humming. I disagree with President Trump on his positions on the Second Amendment. He has put more restrictions on gun rights in one term than President Obama did in two. I think he should be he should tighten up on it. I would love to see him get better in that in his second term, because I'm pretty sure he'll probably win, unless Joe Jorgensen wins as a libertarian. I think that we have to also recognize that if you're on the right, and if you like President Trump for he's entertaining, he's personable, we're not doubting his love for the nation, right? I do think that we should be able to say, we have to hold him accountable when he crosses that line. If you're cutting red tape for economics, that's great, cool. I don't need you cutting red tape when it comes to the Constitution. The statement of, take the guns first, due process later, is not a statement that we're okay with. And I think that we, as people that would identify as the right per se, but all of us being Americans, can be objective enough to say, we like this, we don't like that. The standard is the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. That system of checks and balances. I am not a fan of not being critical of someone when they're saying or doing a thing, even threatening a thing that is unconstitutional. No. I think that another example is this $3 trillion that was the biggest wealth transfer in American history, and this bailout after the Corona thing. I think that Thomas Massey was one of the only politicians willing to step in and say, no, we're not going to have a secret vote on socialism. $3 trillion worth of wealth being transferred, and we're going to have a secret vote on it. No. And I think that, President Trump called him a grandstander. And I think that, Thomas Massey and he's from the great state of Kentucky. I think he's one of the last of the Mohicans in D.C. that's willing to be objective and stick to the Constitution and, actual law and order, how things are going, our process, our due process.
I agree with you. We have a couple more questions.
Sure.
We have Wanda in Savannah, Georgia. Wanda, you're on the Liberty Show.
Hi, Maj. How are you?
Wonderful.
I have a question. How do we get in? How do you have a website? Is this blackgunsmatter.com?
So the best way to get directly in contact with me, you can go to majtoure.com, or you can just follow. I'm more quick on social media. It's just my name, Maj Toure, MAJTOURE. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you want to, my friends list on Facebook is pretty packed. But if you follow official Black Guns Matter _ Maj Toure, you can get me there as well. If you're on Facebook, that's the easiest way on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Also, too, I know you mentioned that you said that you train and actually get people connected with maybe gun areas or places where we can actually get gun ownership or practice target practicing in our area. Is that right?
Absolutely. What city are you in?
I'm in the Savannah area. I live in Richmond Hill, which is just right outside of Savannah. And I'm going to let somebody else in. I'm not going to be long at all. But I know that you did mention that you said that when Donald Trump gets in his second term, what do you mean by that? Do you have an opinion that he will win his second term?
Yeah. If I'm looking at if it's, again, I'm a third party person. I'm a libertarian. But if it's down to him and Joe Biden, let's just be real. Joe Biden is a major reason why so many black men in America are incarcerated. That crime bill was Joe Biden. He made it. Gun-free zones in America was a creation of Joe Biden. It was created in 1990. It was put into law in 1991, like wrapped up as well as like not long after that, not too separate from the Clinton crime bills. And since then, in 1990, or when that was created, over 90% of the mass shootings in America have been in gun-free zones. So his record, and dude, you've been in Congress, you've been in D.C. for 50 years, and what were you waiting on? Like, what was, like, you going to give us the antidote now if we make you president? I just think that as well as we can see Joe Biden is slipping in front of us. He is suffering from something. And I'm saying...
And so is Trump.
Maybe.
So is Trump. Yeah,
I think,
so is Trump.
He's
been slipping a long time. Yeah,
so,
he slipped into this presidency. So he's been sliding a long time. And that's the reason we're in the shape we're in right now.
I somewhat agree, but I somewhat disagree. I'm not a fan of any politician. None of them.
Okay.
They're there to do a job. It's like I hire a plumber. If you're a plumber and if you're there on time and you're a great plumber, you don't have to have the great conversation with me. You don't have to be that articulate. I just want my drains to work properly. What I will say about the current administration, when you're talking about funding for HBCUs, this administration did that. I'm just objective. When you're talking about the First Step Act, which is the reversal of those Clinton crime bills, which is like, okay, let's let people out of jail that have first-time nonviolent offenses. I know Mr. Charles, who did over 20 years for a first-time nonviolent drug possession charge. I know Angela Stanton King, who President Trump, black woman, gave her a presidential pardon after she did her time for federal drug charges. Now, does this mean that his personality is great and he's perfect? Absolutely not. I think he's been weak on my area, which is the Second Amendment. I also think he's been weak on, I want cannabis nationally decriminalized, because we got so many brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. Now, I agree with the cannabis being decriminalized. That is one of the main reasons why. But now, just with race relations, I noticed that you don't mention that at all.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean?
I mean, where do you think he stands with that? And do you think that he has actually incited many of the white nationalism within this country and has us out on this basic slippery slope of this white nationalism that is just actually has been here for a long time, but that's just kind of raising its ugly head?
I think that is raising his head because more so than President Trump. Again, I got to look at what he's done. Okay, if I'm racist, I'm not restoring funding, hundreds of millions of dollars to historically black colleges and universities. That's not what a racist does, right? Unless he's just trying to use that as a cover, but I doubt it. With that being the case, I think more so than Trump. Do I think that he's a personality that knows how to get people going? Absolutely, right? However, I can't look at Trump and not look at mainstream media that is like telling black people, oh, every 4 years when there's a national election, you're under attack by every white person you come across. I can't agree with that. But at the same time, I also know that America has a racial history, and we have to acknowledge that. If we pretending like that's not the case, we're lying. I think what happens is President Trump is like, listen, do what you do. Historically, black people have had a rougher time. That does not mean that they can't work hard just like everybody else, like they already do. And I think that media highlights and makes anything that he says. And again, I'm not a fan of any of these guys. None of them. I wasn't a fan of Obama. If I would have won for city council, I wouldn't have been a fan of none of my peers on city council. None of them. We are there to do a job to serve the people, right? I think that media makes it more about his personality and ignores things. I've been in the White House. I've been there at the Youth Black Leadership Summit, and I was there when he addressed a room full of young black teenagers. And I walked across the street after that and saw how CNN chopped and edited what he said, and I was there. So I think that we ignore how much media manipulates. They'll make the Democratic Party look like they're not Their policies have been horrible for black people. Horrible, horrible, horrible. It's not even like a way to sugarcoat it. They have been destructive, you know? And so when we talk about that, it makes us, and it doesn't mean that the Republican Party has been, the Democratic Party's been winning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've been around. Now, historically, has the Republican Party, the first 13 black senators that were black were Republicans. You know?
Absolutely. I do understand that because that was at that time.
Yeah, and but then
that mindset of that change. Right.
Guys, you've done that back in the day, but what have you Janet Jackson, what have you done for the black community lately? You know, and I'm not saying it has to be targeted specifically to the black community, but I'm also saying you guys kind of like left the hood, you know. So I think this speaks to the need for us to recognize, now maybe more so than ever, the need for us to recognize maybe we should be exercising and supporting a third party or different options. Our votes, it's not about a Blexit just going from one party to the other and back and forth and arguing which one is better and my guy's better than your guy and my woman's better than your woman. It's about what party and what politicians' policies are going to be in the best interests of the people.
I respect that. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like, I don't care if dude is abrasive and a womanizer. I don't care. If he can keep that out of his regular, he's no more abrasive and a womanizer than Bill Clinton was. Okay? What are your policies? Has President Trump locked up a lot of black folk? And I'm only speaking more specifically to black folk, not that the politic has to be targeted specifically for there. But in the reality is, he's let a lot of black men come home. I know a few of them. And I have to respect that. And I can also say, yeah, I think he's a little bit cavalier with how he words things. Like the brother that called it from Texas. I'm not agreeing with you saying that even potentially threatening to, even if it's a veiled or empty threat, as a president, I don't want you saying you're gonna get them recruits and the military boys shot, and you're gonna get American citizens shot as well if you try that. So I wouldn't even say it. What I would love to see is a president that is as smooth and presidential as President Barack Obama was. But the reality is more black nations across the country were bombed under President Obama's regime than any other president in American history. I would love to have someone with the grit of a President Trump, with the diplomatic ease and presence of a Barack Obama. I have not seen that since John F. Kennedy. And that's why John F. Kennedy's my favorite president for those reasons. But I'm just not with the cult of personality. I evaluate it based on their their policy. And if President Trump gets stronger on the Second Amendment, decriminalizes cannabis on a federal level, right? And the economy, after he made it great, I'm going to keep it a buck. He was great on the economy. It's in shambles now because of the coronavirus. If he does that as well as, again, decriminalizing cannabis on the federal level, getting stronger on the Second Amendment, and jumpstarts the economy again in his second term, if he wins, he will go down as the best president that we might disagree with on his personality. He will go down as the strongest president in American history.
Oh, well, we're going to move on to the next question. But we're going to move to Mr. Damon Kennedy in Stockbridge, Georgia. Damon, you're on the Liberty Show.
Hey, Maj, how you doing, my brother?
Hey, what's up, brother? How are you?
All right. So in Liberty circles, you're kind of a celebrity, man. So it's a pleasure to be talking to you, man. And I love your story. I actually ran for public office myself as well as a libertarian. And so kind of the way you did, I saw the limitations in our current environment as far as third parties and how the districts are gerrymandered and how the ballot access requirements are stilted towards only maintaining a duopoly. And so I definitely understand where you're coming from with that. And so, but main thing is, when it comes to gun laws, what people have to understand, and I know you can probably attest to this, but what I think a lot of people need to understand is that when you look at the most stringent cities around the country that have gun restrictions, a lot of them have high levels of gun violence. And so what does that mean? If we kind of peel back the layers of the onion, that means that if you can pass as many laws as you want, what does that mean? That means that criminals are going to do what? By definition, they're going to break the law. So the only thing that higher, levels of gun control do, the only thing that does is it makes law-abiding citizens now criminals, and it keeps them having the opportunity to protect themselves. And furthermore, I recently bought my first firearm probably a couple months ago. And the one thing that I realized as I was looking at YouTube and different gun safety classes and things online, the one thing that gun owners have a high level of respect for is the safety of owning a gun. And the main thing that almost every single video talked about was act like a gun is loaded until you know personally you've checked it and you've discharged it. So there seems to be, I think, you mentioned the media, it was pertaining to Trump, but the reality is the media tries to scare people into thinking that anybody that talks about gun ownership is some yahoo that's going out there looking to pick a fight, looking to shoot somebody. That couldn't be any further from the truth. So I know when you teach your classes about de-escalation, that's very important that you stress that, because a lot of people think, again, people that own guns are just looking for a fight, but the opposite is true. If I have a gun, I know what that gun can do. And again, going back to the videos that I was talking about, as they gave the different instructions on what to do about guns, make sure it's not loaded, always assume that it is, do not point a gun at anything you're not willing to destroy. That is true. You don't point a gun at somebody unless you're willing to use it, because once you get to that point, then you've already gone way past the right of return, and now you've got a problem on your hands. Because if you point a gun at somebody and you don't pull the trigger, well, they don't know that you weren't going to. They might shoot you, and now we've got a problem. So I say all that to say there's a lot of misconceptions about in the media about people who own guns, and if people had a more of appreciation of how safe gun owners truly are, then there could be a shift in society. So that's pretty much all I had. I didn't have any questions. I just want to kind of thank you for being on the program. I love what you're doing, and keep doing what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you for sure.
You didn't thank me, Damon.
That goes without saying. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
No, Damon is my main man. He's the one that got this whole movement started and got the podcast. He worried me to death. So, but he brought up a good point, Maj, that I wanted to talk about. I heard you on another podcast and you got so deep with it. I just started jumping up and shouting and dancing, speaking in tongues. What about the Black culture? And I want you to really be Maj, the real Maj, because we stereotype Blacks that they're in the south side of Chicago with Uzis and gangs. But I remember you were talking about the Cosby Show. That's also Black culture. Can you just address that gun tote and rob and murder, that's just not Black culture. And we as Blacks begin to believe that ourselves. So can you talk about that a minute?
Yeah, so I want to take people back a bit, currently and back simultaneously. Currently, across the country, we're seeing a movement that is being called Black Lives Matter, that has been co-opted, financed by people, Marxists, the negative version of anarchists. I have to be careful when I say that, because anarchist doesn't mean you want chaos, but the negative version of an anarchist could fit that definition. We're seeing something that is bubbling that has been infiltrated from, very totalitarian and communist regimes, China being one of them, Russia being one of them, to influence culture. It started this in the 1920s and 30s. It was to destabilize. You can't fight America straight up. Our neighbors to the north and south of us are weaker than us traditionally. And areas that might give us a bit of a rumble, we can see you coming because we have two large bodies of water on the left and right of us. So if you try to get to us over the Atlantic, we see you coming. If you try to get to us over the Pacific, we see you coming. Now, why do I say this? You cannot fight a nation as powerful as us, especially military, one with such military might. You got to try to influence it from within. Our school systems, civics has been removed from the grade level up. The universities have become cesspools of leftist or Marxist ideology.
Amen, brother.
And now what starts to happen is it starts to seep into areas that do not fall within guidelines, which are media. Media can push a narrative to shift culture that makes and influences the mind of the general public. Since the 1930s, American culture has been infiltrated by Marxists, socialists, communists, here posing, because you have the freedom to talk about whatever you want. And because that freedom is there, they have infiltrated university levels. Now, when you're talking about destabilizing a community, the Black community is the most we built, and I'm not saying this is that we didn't all do it together, but by and large, Black melanated people of color have built America, some by force, some by hard work and support and free market capitalism, so forth and so on. We change culture. We shift culture. We created jazz. It didn't exist before America, before Blacks in America. We then created hip hop, which is the most powerful form of expression in the world. In the world. If you can infiltrate the culture of Black people that lead culture and piggyback off of some of our flaws as a nation, I mean, as an outsider, you can influence culture in a destructive way. When you go to the 1920s, when you have places that I just went to a few weeks ago, like Black Wall Street, where there was a conservative family that ran most families, where segregation created a space where Black communities were solid, were economically affluent, were politically sovereign, and were socially conservative, fiscally conservative. When you had that, you had stronger cities, stronger America. Same thing with white communities. When you have a culture that is a bit racist or a lot of racist, and you do things to break that family down for your own economic gain, and then you introduce, or someone from the outside introduces, Marxist ideology and education designed to break that liberty-minded, conservative-based family structure, that came from external. It wasn't just Black people deciding to go, hey, instead of us fast forward a bit, hey, we're not going to listen to Bill Cosby. They have attacked Bill Cosby. You see where he's at right now. All of the solid Black leaders, and again, I don't want my white American, Asian American, Latin American listeners or solutionaries to be offended. I'm just specifically talking about Black America at this moment. When you infiltrate that and outside infiltrators add on to that infiltration, you get a breakdown. So when you have an organization like Black Lives Matter that's initially started to address some serious social issues in America, Black people, not limited to, but Black people, it seemed like the media, which wasn't telling the whole truth, because white Americans were getting mowed down by corrupt portions of law enforcement more than anybody, but that wasn't sexy enough to incite race riots and wars and get people to take the race bait. When mass media said, oh man, the whites, they highlighted something. Those are organizations funded, so a lot of them are funded and supported by extreme left, Marxist, socialist, and or communist regimes that have no attachment to the American dream or ideal. And that's at the extreme level. At the least level is just irresponsible Americans that are interested in ad revenue from clicks. When you create that perfect storm of chaos, communism, socialism, lack of principle, and you use and you highlight the worst of whatever culture, and you highlight that and you reward it with riches and fame, you get what you get. You get chaos. You get governmental programs saying, we want the Black father out of the household. Even with the CDC stats showing that Black fathers are among some of the most active fathers of any ethnic group in America. That's data. That's fact. But the mainstream narrative is still, oh, the Black guys aren't around their children. It's a falsehood. So the culture is shifted because it's been hijacked. When you have a Jimmy Iovine, Jewish dude, owning at that time 60% of Black music, that is not going to be Black culture. The Cosby Show was Black culture. Strong family. Everyone had the ability to express themselves, but there was still a structure. You're still going to listen to your mom. You're still going to listen to your dad. You're going to be in bed at a certain night. You're going to make sure that you're informed and educated. You're going to seek higher learning and knowledge. We're going to give you room to try things out. But as adults, we have a responsibility to our family unit. That is actually Black culture. The hypersexualized, hyper-criminalized caricature that has been presented is not Black culture. You're looking at decades of an approach to break down one of the strongest structures in American lifestyle, which is the Black family. You know, Black people, melanated beings, helped the colonizers when they came here. That is the fact. Yellow people, our Asian brothers and sisters that migrated here, built the railroads. That is a fact. The natives to this land owned a lot of things, and we would not have made it. And I say we, I mean our nation, the founding fathers. I wasn't there. They wouldn't have made it through the starving times. That's just the reality. And so you have to, if you're an outside entity, to try to break that, whether we're talking about present time, we're seeing how Black Lives Matter movement has been co-opted and diverted. You seeing it. You seeing the videos of, you know, white liberals giving young kids that don't even know why they're there bricks to go break into things for a pair of sneakers. That has nothing to do with the protest. We've seen the message that Colin Kaepernick initially was, hey, I'm trying to highlight a thing that a combat veteran told him to do, that he broke down the reason for why he was bringing attention to it. We saw that message being hijacked by mainstream media. So these are all things that coincide. We have been infiltrated ideologically, culturally, by communists. They are literally influencing young people's minds via leftist universities to the point where Congress people are calling themselves democratic socialists. The Nazi Party, Hitler was a socialist. This is where we at right now, and that's why you're seeing the breakdown of what it is. Most people don't tie things together enough, though, because we're talking about time over time. We're talking about different angles in all of the areas of human activity: entertainment, education, labor, law, religion, politics, sex, and war.
Interesting. Thank you, man. We've got another question. We're going to go to Miss Charlie down in Atlanta, Georgia. Hey, Miss Charlie, you're on the Liberty Show.
Hey, Kevin, how are you?
Wonderful.
Good. When I know, because he deals with, training people with guns and things of that nature. But when the Black Panther Party tried to utilize that same Second Amendment that he's speaking of, next thing you know, that's the first time, as far as I know, that the NRA wanted to talk about or implement some type of gun control, because here at that point, you had some African Americans who, yes, had read that Second Amendment and that Bill of Rights and were bearing arms. And then it becomes a problem in America to a point where, with J. Edgar Hoover, they become, the number one target in America. So, and with that being said, we find in that time as well that they had pretty much, of course, killed off certain members of the Black Panther Party. So my question to him is, do you not feel that if this initiative that you're trying to start, Black Guns Matter or something of that nature, do you not think that our government once again will try to do the same? I mean, because to a certain extent they do. If you've been to jail and you're a felon, you can't come out, you can't own a gun, you can't vote, you can't do this and the other. Do you not think that they would not come up with another way to try to prevent from guns being in the hands of African American people in this country?
It's too late. They could try. It's too late. It's too late. It's too much.
Why do you think that it's too late? Because I mean, if that was
try and do what? I mean, so my level of commitment to it is, I knew when I took on this role, right? And your question is 100% spot on. So let's be clear. All gun control is rooted in racism. That's not like me saying it to sound cool. The very first gun laws in this country were like, yo, everybody but the Black people can have guns. Like, that is the root of gun control in America. Those the Black codes, all that other type of stuff. With that being the case, yeah, I expect them to, but it's too late. We already got the guns. The 2019 and 2020 have shown massive, record-breaking firearms purchases across the country. That's number one. Number two, the highlight has been shown. The approach that you got to do it this way got to be different. You can't do it the same way you did it in California. And it's too many of us. And you'll try to hide it under the guise of, oh, we need more fees, or we need to take guns off the street. And they're trying it in the form of HR 5717, which is, hey, let's tax it. There needs to be 30% tax on ammo. We need to do this. We need to do that. No, but Black people also, that's why a portion of our classes is political education. You can't keep voting in the same people that are going to try to restrict your right from defending yourself from a tyrannical government. And that part is the part that was not being said beforehand. It was just like, we have the right to do this. Okay, but now that has to tie into who are you voting for locally, more specifically.
Right.
If you're talking about trying to stop African Americans from exercising their human right as stated in the Second Amendment, then you ain't getting the vote. You know, simple and plain. So that's their way of doing it now. Now they can't do it the same way. They could have in the 60s. It was a time when it was much more overt racism, you know? Now it's covert, but we could break that with just a little bit of knowledge itself. And it's too late. The guns is already here, baby. Like there's no stopping that. Now, as far as me and my individual safety, I don't give a shit. I don't care. Like I didn't expect to be alive this long. So everything from here on out is a holiday, you know? And so that part is like, yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask you a question. You guys are bringing up the point that I really wanted to talk about tonight. I thank you, Ms. Charter. She's always on point. I'm a big civil rights historian, and, you know, the civil rights movement was always quoted as nonviolent and peaceful. So now when we talk about guns, they're like, oh, you guys aren't following Dr. King's leadership. You're not with the civil rights movement. So can you address that? Because you want to, protect yourself with a gun does not, can you just deal with that issue? Because we get a lot of flack about that.
Yeah, Dr. King. So it's two things to that. One, it's always interesting when people, when they in positions of power, they want to tell you to be peaceful, right?
I agree.
Meaning America, our nation, where I live, and I love America. I love it. I love from sea to shining sea. I love it, right? Our nation was created off of violence, conquest. All nations are. It's just what it is. No different than I've been to Africa 3 times. I love it. I love it. The people of Africa were conquered. That happened. That happened. No different than the Spanish people were conquered by melanated Moors. You were conquered. We we almost like slept with your women and like almost put you out of existence. That happened. It's not me like making it up. It's just what happened. It's what world history, right? So that's one thing. People always want to, when they're in positions of power, want to talk that peace talk, right? And some of this is the uprising that you get, not all of it, but some of the people's frustration is because things are not okay. We're a great nation, but we got to do more. We got to do more to respect all of our citizens, right? No different than there's a reason why 60% of suicides are gun-related deaths in America are suicides, because we're leaving a lot of young people feeling unwhole or not a part of this American dream, right? So, chickens come home to roost. Now, that's the part about the irony about you got to do it the peaceful way. Okay, well, Colin Kaepernick was kneeling and he did it peaceful. Y'all didn't like that. Now when people are violating and yelling and mad, oh, yeah, not that way. Well, how you want it? We just did it peacefully. You called him an anti-American dude. You didn't listen to his interview of why he said he was doing it. And he didn't say just black people. He's like, yo, it's happening to black people. I'm using my platform to bring some awareness to it, right? So that was peaceful. You didn't like that. Now it's non-peaceful. Now you don't like that. So you don't know really what you want. And America, George Washington and the boys shot the British. They shot them. That's violence, okay? And it created a great nation out of violence. The other thing, the second point, when they bring up Dr. King was a gun owner. He had an arsenal. Dr. King was denied a license to carry by Georgia police. Denied. It's not me making it up. So when they talk that, oh, Dr. King wanted peace, Dr. King was also defended by the Deacons of Defense and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. The Deacons of Defense was there holding them down, getting them away from certain things after they did speeches and all of that. There was an armed arm of that movement. So that person that says that, it's a great opportunity to give them some information on that. A, Dr. King was armed. B, Dr. King filed for a license to carry a gun. He didn't because he just was denied. And a lot of those people that helped out with that movement were armed. And even towards later on, when Dr. King, when Malcolm X, he said basically, our brothers and sisters that are nonviolent. We are not. And we'll be there to help our brothers and sisters that just want a little bit of freedom. And if you pick on them, we're going to pick on you. So that's just it.
We got a really a good friend of mine from up in Minnesota, Mr. Louis. He has been sending a lot of texts. I think he's got something to say. He always adds to our conversation. Louis, you're on the Liberty Show. Welcome.
As you can see from the comments I left, I wanted to make it, I have a bachelor's in history, and I've read quite a bit about the Nazis before. I just wanted to be as emphatic as possible that the Nazis were not socialists, despite what
does Nazi stand for? Tell me, read what it says. What does NAZ stand for?
Yes, it stands for National Socialist, but the thing.
Wait. So it stands for National Socialist, correct?
Yes, and names can be deceptive as it turns out.
No, names have words. Words have meanings. National Socialist Party.
Okay, do you know what the NSDAP was originally called before it rebranded itself?
When Hitler was in charge of the Nazi Party, was it called the National Socialist? It's very simple. Was it called that?
Yes, it was, okay. But they weren't using socialist in the leftist sense of the word. As you can see there in that link I just sent, that is what the NSDAP was originally called before they changed their name to include the word socialist. And as you can see...
What was America called before it was called America? Why is it called America and not Colombia?
The one Italian explorer who...
Amerigo Vespucci, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, before it was called America, what was it called?
I don't know, and where are you getting at?
Okay, so my point in saying that is when it was called America, it was America. And there's a concept of America based on these charters and treaties and things based on these definitions and words, right? This is our structure. We have a judicial, executive, legislative branch, Congress, blah, 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 system of checks and balances. This is what makes up America under this name, the rebrand. Before it was called America, some of the natives to this land, whether they were Choctaw or Iroquois, it was called Turtle Island. Right? So some of the practices is called Turtle Island. It's not America. Some of the practices, the concepts, based on the definitions of words, even the concept of like, yo, we don't even own land, bro. Like you could use the land, like just use it. That concept was what was there when it was called a thing. Then a rebrand happened. Yours went from rebranding one thing. And when you're talking about socialists, because I love when people say Hitler wasn't a socialist. He literally says it in the title. National.
It may surprise you to know that Hitler was actually opposed to the decision among the party to rename themselves to the National Socialist German Workers' Party.
Well, but he voted against it and was outvoted, right?
Okay, yes, he was, but it wasn't because they were socialists. He was against it because he didn't want.
So what were they? If they weren't socialists, what were they?
I mean, the Nazis were also anti-capitalist, but they were.
Wait. So they were anti-capitalist, right? So you're saying they were anti-capitalist. Let's go into that.
Yes, but that's not unique to left-wing ideologies. You can.
So wait, give me a second. So you're saying they were against free market capitalism. Okay. Who made their uniforms? Hugo Boss. Who made all of their tanks and their vehicles?
Various German corporations like Krupp.
No, and Volkswagen.
Okay,
right?
Sure.
So did Volkswagen do that for the love of the state, or did the Nazi Socialist Party pay them? So they're saying they're anti-capitalist, but they're practicing capitalism.
They were not like free market capitalism. They believed that the economy should be dominated by a handful of large corporations that had.
So wait. Okay. So wait.
That is not socialistic. That is not like having a command economy like the USSR. That is like.
So wait. So let me. You just said they wanted a handful of people to control the means of. I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit, right? They wanted a handful of people to control the means of production. Would you agree with that statement that I'm paraphrasing for you?
In the sense that it was controlled by private firms rather than the state itself, yes.
So you're saying that the German people thought that a few private firms should control the means of production,
no,
as opposed to just the state. I'm just trying to get clear on what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that the elites of the NSDAP had won the favor of the kind of upper class of like landowners and like business owners in Germany, because the Nazis were highly in favor of privatization, and they wanted to place more power in the hands of large corporations and business firms.
Oh, okay,
Not
okay.
at all like what the USSR did. The USSR ran a command economy that ran all industry.
All means of production are controlled by the state. That's hardcore communism. I get you.
And that is not what the NSDAP advocated for. Like,
so let me ask you this. What if the Nazi party was not socialist? Just tell me if you could sum it up in one word, right? What would it be? What were they?
They were far-right radicals who believed in corporatism and German white supremacy.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Cool.
Hey, guys. Okay, I'm going to call time here. Interesting conversation. But Louis, I have a question for you. As a socialist Democrat, or you're affiliated with that party, how do you guys feel about Second Amendment rights?
I am fully in favor of Second Amendment rights. In fact, I would go so far as to say that the Second Amendment is not thorough or extensive enough as it ought to be, because as it stands, it mostly upholds the rights of white gun owners.
That's not true.
The Second Amendment has not done nearly enough to protect.
That's not true, bro. So when that Second Amendment is read, it doesn't say white people, black people, because the Bill of Rights was codified human rights that government does not grant or can remove. That's what it's supposed to be. So it doesn't say, oh, the Second Amendment is only for white dudes. Now, was there some very anti-black, anti-melanated, pro-white shit in state and local municipality statutes? Absolutely. That is the origin of the racism of gun control. But the Second Amendment, as written, says nothing about any race of people at all. At all. You do know that there were black landowners that were gun owners even in the midst of the slave codes and all that other stuff too, right? What you said was the Second Amendment is not clear enough because it gives more, and I'm paraphrasing, it gives more, energy over to the, white males. And that's not true.
Jared, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Not at the moment. I appreciate everyone's contributions tonight. And even if it can get a bit fiery at times, healthy debate.
That's good.
Yeah.
Fiery is good. That means people have perspective. Jared is still my brother. Jared still has a love for the work that we do. When we get to a point where we can't have heated discussions and still go get a drink, that's when we're in danger, or we're not even engaging each other in conversation. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Jared, is Tim on here tonight, or?
Yeah, we got Tim. I see him lurking.
Our main man, Tim, you're going to get the final word, and then Maj, but Tim Smith from Atlanta, Georgia, you're on the Liberty Show.
Maj, I am a huge fan. I am freaking out over here. Thank you for all you do for the firearms community and for liberty in general. I just have a couple of questions, if you will. How can we better convey the message of liberty to urban communities? And when are you coming to Atlanta, man? We got to hang out.
I'll be in Atlanta. I don't know. It's actually within a couple of, not too far from now. So your question of how can we convey, say that part again.
The message of liberty. So I'm not knocking the LP.
Oh yeah. You just gotta, if you're doing it from an urban demographic, it just has to be straightforward and honest, and you have to be willing to, one, stick to definitions as well as respect other people's perceptions. You know what I mean? And just not like, I don't gotta be a Democrat. I don't gotta be a Republican. The conversation is, I can be a Democrat and I can be a Republican, or I can be an independent, or I can be a Green Party member, or whatever. The point is, when you translate liberty very simply, you're able to make strides in that direction because people can practically understand it. And that, for me, has been one of the most effective ways to just be able to say, this is what liberty means to me. It just means that I'm able to, if I want to slather myself up with butter on Wednesdays in my house, the government shouldn't be worried about me slathering myself up with butter in my house on Wednesdays. That's my business. You know what I'm saying? And people get that, and it's just coming up with just very simple ways of translating your choices. If you want to watch The Office 1,000 times in a month on repeat like I do, you have the liberty to do so, and just everybody relates to that. When we do it from a freedom perspective and your choice outside of just whatever, politician you like or whatever political party you're associated with, it's just about liberty. And when you translate it that way, most people get it. I mean, unless they socialists.
And I'm going to add on to that, Maj, which Tim and Damon them already know what I'm saying. You got to put your liberty into action. And that's one reason I was honored to have you on the show. We've got a lot of people talking about liberty and freedom, and I'll give you an example. Recently, when they had some of the shootings and rioting and protesting here in Atlanta, you had, quote, Black civil rights leaders that were telling the people quiet on, and the people were laughing at them because they're like, who are you? We don't hear from you. We've never seen you. Where are you in the community? Where are you putting your civil rights or activism into action? So I think that when you start to, like what you're doing, take your libertarian views and your freedom views and actually put them into action, people respect that. And I keep preaching that. I know people are tired of me saying that, but people respond. They would rather see a sermon than hear one. You agree?
I absolutely agree. I think that that's a critical component. And I think that if we keep that at the forefront of our thought process, I think we can't really, people can see it, they can feel it, they can touch you. Like I tell people when I'm in a city, yo, my exact location is XY. I'm at this cigar bar. Come chop it up. You can't want to, if you want to save the world or save your country, you got to trust your countrymen and women, and that action and that deed and being with the people is key. And people see the competence that you have and the confidence that you exude because what you're saying is accurate. You've done the due diligence, and that gives them inspiration and confidence, and they move forward in liberty as well. So absolutely 100% agree.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that because I've been in liberty a while too long. I'm ready to resign as King of Liberty. Maj, I'm crowning you the new king. But people, we get caught up in so much intellectual, ideological, philosophical, and people are just lost. They just want to, pick up, like what you're doing. Okay, you have the right to use your gun. They can relate to that practical stuff. But I think that Mr. Drew Adams has the final comment, and then we're going to have final words from Maj. Go ahead, Drew. You're back on the Liberty Show.
Yeah, thanks you. I wanted to comment because I love what Maj was just talking about, leading with our principles of libertarianism. I think that we win on our principles when we lead with our principles because liberty is pragmatic. And I think there's a broader point here to be made that liberty really does bring us all together. In this conversation of fascism versus socialism versus corporatism versus Marxism, whatever. I think libertarianism really is the philosophy of the common people because, we look at it instead of just from strictly a racial perspective, it's natural rights for everybody.
Right.
And right now, I think it's one of the reasons that you see in these protests since the George Floyd thing, you see a lot more white people out in the street because I think, white people and other people across America, while we can acknowledge that Black America has a special relationship with the police state as victims of the police state. Okay. It's a very special relationship of abuse.
Oh boy.
But it's not just the Black population. We have a police state, period. It just so happens that the police state is just like everything else that the state does. When the state becomes top heavy, when it becomes violent, when it becomes aggressive towards people's rights, it's the most vulnerable people in the population that feel the state's top heaviness and feel the burden of the state. So that puts it into minority and poor communities and even disabled people. Those are the people who are going to feel the weight of the state first and worst.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I think that right now, as libertarians, white libertarians, and other people like me, have to understand that this moment in our history is not just about George Floyd. It's not just about Ahmaud Arbery. It's not just about Eric Garner and Tamir Rice and Walter Scott and the black people that we have seen murdered under this police state tyranny, but we're all under a police state tyranny. And there's an old quote from Patrick Henry that says that you have to defend even your enemy from oppression, because
Yep.
if you don't, that's a precedent that will reach to yourself. You have to defend their liberty just like it's your liberty. And I would point out that in all reality, this great experiment in American freedom has been for every race from the very beginning. When a black man named Crispus Attucks was gunned down in the street, double tapped to the chest, took 2 shots to the chest as the first victim of the British Crown in the American Revolution, gunned down by the redcoats, who were basically the police of the day. So this has been a revolution of all people towards freedom from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
Thanks for letting me chime in again, guys. I just wanted you to know I'm with you, and I really appreciate being here.
Thank you so much. Well, guys, we've come to the end of our show. We thank you so much for all of your great comments and controversy. And that's what this show is about. Liberty is about freedom. You have the freedom to be you, and we give you that platform here. We want to thank our special guest, Mr. Maj Toure. And in my closing remarks, and then we'll let Maj in, is that, we do a lot of talking and we do a lot of analyzing, but let's put our liberty into action. And one way you can start is by subscribing to our show on YouTube, Anchor, Apple, iPad, Google. Also, we would love to hear from you. Leave a comment, like the shows, and we would also appreciate a donation. You can go to patreon.com/The Liberty Show and be one of our sponsors, any amount. It was a $5 monthly donation, but now it could be any amount. Also, we will make sure, Maj, that we put links into our show notes for people to contribute to you, as well as get in contact with you. Because we're not isolationists. We're about lifting up liberty. And we do believe in helping and supporting others. So thank you guys so much. So Maj, my main man, let us go out with the bang. If you could say anything, if you had a billboard to say anything to the people of the world, what would you say?
I would say, I want everyone to be logical during these times. Recognize that the media is the most effective devil in America. Recognize that you are, you have to be like gods. The devil going to do what the devil going to do, but you got to be God. You got to be godlike. You have to make sure that you're moving righteous. You're thinking logically. You have the power of life and death within you. And I want you to be very stringent with those powers. On top of that, if you don't really understand liberty, if you want to understand, reach out. Let's chop it up. Let's do that. If you're just going to complain and not really try to get new information and understand and strengthen your perspective and be objective, don't fucking talk to me. Unfollow me. Don't engage with me at all, because I don't want to hear anything that you're talking about at all. You're probably a commie, and I'm just not really here for you. I love you, but I'm just probably not here for you. And then I'd say, donate to the work. GoFundMe.com/Black Guns Matter.
Oh, boy. Now, that's the real Maj Toure. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time on The Liberty Show.
All right,
Goodbye.
peace, y'all.